You can go, Paige.
Paige, I want to remind everyone that during this show, we will be discussing a very important topic that has plagued our community for decades. Not only will this be an educational experience for all, but it will also be my daughter's way of spreading awareness to the community. I also would like to enforce some rules before we begin. These rules are in place to make sure that this show is viewer-friendly. There will be a zero tolerance for any forms of rude or derogatory statements, harassment, bullying, or any forms of hate. I will remind you that this show is being hosted by my daughter and to keep all comments in the comment bar child-friendly, so keep it PG, please. Anyone who fails to respect these rules will be blocked immediately and reported. So without further delay, I would like to hand the show over to your host this evening, my daughter, Paige, aka the Mad Hatter.
Hello everyone, my name is the Mad Hatter, and I would first like to say thank you for all of you to join on this very special show. The show may be triggering due to some content we'll be covering, so please be advised that the show is to bring awareness to a topic I feel is often not addressed within our community. Tonight's topic is about drug abuse and how it affects the community as a whole. By definition of drug abuse, oh, my bad. I'm trying to move my chair. By the definition of drug abuse falls under substance abuse. Technically, the word substance abuse is an umbrella term that covers the following: alcohol abuse, pain medicine, and psychedelic drugs, or any illegal drugs such as meth. Not only does drug abuse affect the user, but it affects everyone in the community. I want you also know that drug abuse once weren't users. They were either introduced to or develop this habit due to circumstance in their life. Drug abuse or substance abuse refers to the use of certain chemicals for the purpose of creating pleasurable effects on the brain. During my research, I found that the National Institute on Drug Abuse states that people use drugs for many reasons. They want to feel good, stop feeling bad, or perform better in school or at work. Or they are curious about others doing it and they want to fit in. The last reason is very common among teens. Drugs excite parts of the brain that makes you feel good. But after you take the drug for a while, the feel-good parts of the brain gets used to. Then you need to take more of the drug to get the same good feeling soon. Your brain and your body must have the drug to feel normal. Sadly, many people within our society turn a cheek to this and often feel it is not their problem a user is using. Well, I feel as a society, it is very false assumption that drug addiction only affects the people who know or are using it. And that is wrong in my opinion. It affects everyone, and it is my goal to spread awareness to this important topic. As a child, when I lived in New York, I would see individuals selling drugs on corner streets, or on streets of corners, in front of the schools and businesses. As a teen is when I realized, what are these people doing? And how harmful their activities were to onlookers. Impressionable children like myself and the individuals they were selling to. And then I would walk a little bit further and see paraphernalia on the floor, even in playgrounds and schoolyards. The public just walking past it. Children playing around it, even touching the needles and casing to the drugs. And this is why I say it's a community problem that affects each and every one of us. Tonight, I have some guests that will be discussing this topic with us. As I introduce you, please tell me, the viewers, about yourself. Okay, you can see here, this is my mom right here, Sasha McManus. And I have my principal, actually, Mr. Dean Perry, or Kenny Perry as well. And I have Donna Gordon right there. Hi, Donna. And then I have Katie Kamala. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Amanda, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. So my name is Amanda McManus. I am, as Paige introduced me as, her mother. I have an extensive background as well as many degrees in the field of psychology, human behavior, social science, should I say. So I actually have, like I said, these degrees, and it is my goal to utilize these degrees to help individuals who may need support in their struggles within our society. So thank you for having me on the show today, Paige.
You're welcome. Katie Kamala, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Paige. Yes, my name is Katie Kamara, or other words known as Reverend Katie Kamara. I, by trade, a professional, I am a meta-psychoanalyst with an extensive background in psychology or modern applied science. I'm also a coach, a counselor, and a therapist. I'm also a candidate PhD in integrated alternative medicine. So I have, part of my job is to work in psychiatry, working through mental illness and helping people through their traumas in life and going a little bit deeper into the subconscious. So that's my background.
Thank you. Can I have Dean Perry, or Kenny Perry, you can say?
Most definitely. Thank you, Paige, for announcing me. So for those folk who don't know me, my name is Dean Perry, or it's Kenny Perry. They call me Dean Perry. In regards to this topic, I have extensive knowledge. I was a former clinician for an agency in Hartford for 5 years. Prior to that, I had my own organization in Philadelphia for 15 years, working directly with this substance abuse issue, not only in schools, but also in our community. I have clients that continually stay in contact with me. And let's just say I do have extensive knowledge as well, not only in my family, but also directly in the community. There's, drug abuse and drug addiction is real. And I'm glad that you are taking the time to not only research this topic, but to have an open dialogue about it. So thank you very much for inviting me to this conversation.
Thank you for coming here to the show. Last but not least, Donna Gordon.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Paige, for having me on as a guest tonight. I am very respectful of you doing this, and I honor your bravery in going forward with this topic that is of huge importance to our society. So that said, I have my Bachelor of Science degree in psychology with the focus on abnormal psychology, and spent my career working in the field of basically as what most people would call a social worker in a variety of different contexts, working with families. I'm credentialed in family development, and really just spent my time working with families one-on-one through home visits to try to prevent child abuse from happening before it got to that level, or foster care, and working with the community, the schools, and home, trying to create that triad, bringing everybody together to work as a village to help raise the children. And that said, on a personal level, I deal with substance abuse, kind of runs rampant in my family. Addiction runs very high, self-medicating, mental health issues, so forth. And so I kind of grew up with this being a hot topic, if you will, and a personal level of encountering and learning how to deal with it along the way, and then going on to help others try to work through it as well, and struggling with my own addiction at one time as well. So that said, I think this is a hugely important topic.
Well, I want to say thank you. And I also want to say thank you to all my guests for taking time to participate inside the show. I will now be asking questions, well, series of questions to each and one of my guests. To Katie,
Hi.
I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Take your time. That's all you need. And I want you to go over what's your opinion about, what's your perspective about drug abuse and drug addiction. How do you feel drug addiction affects society as a whole?
Well, my answer for that would be my background dealing with clients, and obviously I do have people that have been very, very close to me that have gone through addictions as well. Even my mother is an addiction counselor. That's her job, and she's a therapist as well. So I hear about this on a daily basis. But did you know that any given time, approximately 10% of the US population is abusing drugs and alcohol, with multitudes of families and friends, neighbors, employees, and workers being directly affected? And of course, the impact on society that it costs a lot of money in lost revenue in terms of healthcare and legal fees and all of that kind of stuff. Now, drug abuse is associated with higher rates of foster care, child placements, child abuse, college sexual assaults, prison sentences, and lost productivity coupled with increased work-related injuries. Now, the closest to drug addicted individuals are the hardest hit. And from my personal experience, common patterns emerge within families that where at least one individual is addicted to drugs. And these patterns might include high levels of criticism or negativism within households, or parental inconsistencies, or in the case of just parents coping with a drug addicted child. And it also, the biggest one there is denial. Now, of course, there's going to be misdirected anger between drug addiction and non-addicted family members, and that is very, very common, and as is self-medication as a strategy in coping with family dysfunction. And we can also see that codependent relationships often form between partners, especially in my circumstance, whereas I had a partner, was previously married to somebody, which resulted in domestic violence. And of course, there are many, many people out there who have codependent relationships that end abruptly because of addicted partners of domestic dispute, which result in domestic disputes involving the use of alcohol and or drugs. Now, of course, children with one or more parents abusing drugs are more likely to take on the responsibility of the parental role, and often functioning in the denial of their parents' addiction or behaviors relating to their addictions. Now, these children effectively commonly lack the necessities, including like shelter, and they have little to no health care. And of course, families with at least one drug addicted parent are most likely to end up homeless or in poverty. And they are most likely left to have inadequate health care, representing the most common barrier in obtaining treatment for any addiction. Now, I will say that it also includes foster placements. And of course, I know that, Donna, you have an extensive background in that. And so I'll let her speak mostly on that. But I will say that 75% of all foster placements and 80% of all child abuse and neglect cases cite drug and alcohol abuse as a primary factor. And of course, the rates of substance abuse amongst youth in foster care are significantly higher than comparative populations. Now, we can even go into the specific drug types that are associated with higher rates of child custody losses. For instance, fewer than 10% of babies are born to untreated heroin addicted mothers, and they reside with their biological mothers at 5 years of age. And sadly, these children of drug addicted individuals are 8 times likely to abuse drugs as adults. And so, of course, the drug abuse in society can can result in child custody losses, child abuse, domestic disputes, homelessness, poverty, financial healthcare burdens. You know, there's an increase on the number of people incarcerated, violent crimes, and all sorts of stuff. Now, drug addiction is a complex. People need to understand that drug addiction is a complex illness, and it's far-reaching consequences for those who know and work with and support people like us that is on here, the show tonight. Support the drug addicted individual. Even if you don't know someone who is abusing drugs directly, you are likely impacted in other ways. And of course, the one thing I want to emphasize here is drug addiction knows no boundaries.
Thank you for that lovely question. My next question is, have you ever dealt with someone who suffers with addiction,
Yeah,
drug abuse, and how did it affect you?
I certainly have. My youngest brother actually has an addiction. Of course, he is now, how old is he? He would be 21 years old now. He picked up a habit through marijuana and crack, I think, from what I understand. And of course, he got into the wrong circles, and he dealt with, when it came to dealing with his addiction itself, he pretty much put his arms up and said, I can do whatever I want. And that is the saddest part, is that you cannot, you know, it's the saying, like, you cannot lead a horse to water. Sometimes the first step to recovery is to admit that there's a problem in the first place. And when I mentioned about being previously married to somebody who does have an addiction, that mechanism to deal with somebody who does not admit that there is a problem in the first place, they continue to abuse themselves over and over again. It becomes a case of hopelessness, and you're trying everything and anything and everything to try and save this person, but they don't want to recognize it. And in the case of my brother, he, you know, as a family member, I looked at him as like, okay, well, he must not be immature. He must be immature to understand, you know, the effects. And this is, you know, it's just a part of growing up and all of that. But the problem is that we can see the devastating effects that it has on him. And unfortunately, no matter how many times we try and hold ourselves accountable for the things that other people do, sometimes it becomes, you know, emotionally devastating in terms of, you know, what do I do now? Like, is there anything that I can do? How, you know, you feel like you're at an emotional loss. In terms of the person that I was married to, that was going through alcoholism and drug abuse, and and that borderlines into mental health as well, because there were other things that came up as a result of it. And so, which resulted in aggression. It resulted in brokenness. It resulted in me taking a step back and saying, hey, maybe I can't deal with this, and maybe it's affecting my personal health. And so that's when I took a step back and said, okay, it is what it is. I've done the best of my ability, but at least I can at least reach out in such a way that, you know, it's not imposing on somebody, because there are some people out there that will continue to abuse themselves and not realize what they're doing until it's too late.
Thank you for that lovely question. I'm so proud of you. You're so strong. But you have my support for you. You know that you have my mom's, you have everyone's here. You're not alone. I know how everything feels. When I grew up, it was like, I know how that feels. So I'm very proud of you. Good job. And ask the next question. How do you think drug abuse and mental health what is that one?
Correlate.
Correlate to one another?
Well, those who abuse drugs and alcohol are more likely to engage in risk-taking behaviors, and they have a higher co-occurrence of mental health disorders. And that's what I was just mentioning about before. And they are more likely to be incarcerated for crimes and committed than non-drug using individuals. Now, of course, these people are adults now who may involve themselves in illegal activities. Now, of course, the burden in terms of costs and trauma and influence on the entire country, if I talk, projected as an entire nation, it's huge. We have a word called comorbidity, and it refers to the fact that two conditions such as specific mental health disorders and a substance use disorder often coexist together. And what this means is that in many people with addictions, there is an underlying mental health issue as well. And while neither condition actually causes the other, they do often exist together. What's more is one condition can exacerbate symptoms of the other. And to better understand how comorbidity is possible, it helps to recognize that both are chronic brain disorders. Now, in other words, when someone struggles with an addiction, their brain has been permanently rewired by the substance that they abused. This in turn causes the brain to function differently than before, which is why we see a lot of people out there who are all over the place. We do see a mental decline. And just like diabetes or heart disease, a person with an addiction must manage his or her condition for the rest of their life. And it's not simple as just stopping the drug or using or alcohol conditions. Many times this is simply not possible. And likewise, the changes that take place in the brain due to the substance abuse occur in the same brain areas that are impacted by depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder. And consequently, it should not be surprising that there are a high rate of comorbidity between addiction and other mental illnesses. And while the link is complex, some mental health issues increase the risk factors for substance abuse. And what this means is that some people with mental illnesses will turn to alcohol or to drugs to cope with the pain of their mental health issues. And even though that there's a high rate of comorbidity between addiction and mental illness, it does not mean that one necessarily caused the other, even if one condition appeared first. Instead, there are still a number of factors that need to be considered. And I'm going to let you know what they are. And these drug abuse can cause people to experience one or more symptoms. Another mental illness, for example, there's an increased risk of psychosis in marijuana users. Mental disorders can lead to drug or alcohol abuse because some people use substances to self-medicate. For instance, the nicotine in tobacco products sometimes lessens certain symptoms of schizophrenia and may improve cognition. There is also some evidence that indicates that addictions and mental illnesses are caused by underlying brain deficits, genetic influences, and exposure to trauma early in life. For instance, it is estimated that 40 to 60% of a person's vulnerability to addiction can be attributed to genetics. And there are several regions of the human genome that have been linked to an increased risk for both substance abuse and mental illness. Another common factor between mental health issues and addiction is the age at which the symptoms appear. During the teen years, for instance, people are still developing, maturing, and growing. And as a result, significant changes in the brain occur during adolescence. For instance, teenagers are more prone to take risks and act impulsively. And these behaviors, while common among teens, can influence the risk of addiction and mental disorders. We can also go into stress. Stress is another reason why a lot of people out there, or stress and pain, a lot of people out there do self-medicate to lessen the pain or the effect of what they are going through. And finally, people who are physically or emotionally traumatized are much higher risk of substance abuse disorders. And the connection is particularly concerning for veterans, I will mention, returning to the country. In fact, 1 in 5 military servicemen and women coming back from Iraq or Afghanistan have reported symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD and or major depression.
Thank you, and I would actually like to clap about that. We do see teens more at risk to develop an addiction due to its fact they want to fit in. Which teens do that, and I find that very not nice for other teens, because some teens will push other kids to do it, and they'll get a hold of that, and they'll actually hide it from the parents. They do. And the parents will yell at them, tell them, hey, what's wrong with you? Do you need help? Like, you want me to go, like, do you need someone to talk to? And all the kids can say, no, leave me alone. And then after that, you see a whole bunch of kids acting all different, acting up. And I feel like as a teen myself, I never want to do that because it can cause illness. It really can. So I will usually it will shut people out. Like, it will shut people out completely. They'll ignore everyone. They'll don't care what they want to do. As long as they have what they want, they're gonna be happy with. But they don't care about the education. They care about the drugs. The so much use they have. They will take money away from people. It's very disrespectful. I find that. I'm gonna ask you another question.
Sure.
What do you think can help prevent drug use?
When someone in the family is suffering from a drug addiction, it affects everyone. You may feel angry, confused, and terrified. You may be baffled by the changes for your loved one, desperate to get them the help that they needed, and uncertain on how to do so. But I will say that yelling and crying and begging for the person that is abusing their drugs is not usually helpful at all. Having extreme reactions from family members may compound the shame and guilt that the addict actually feels. It's a kind of like, how can you convince your brother, your sister, your wife, your husband, your parent or child to get help without driving them further into the addiction itself? And my suggestion would be, it is possible to convince someone to get help, but it requires preparation and strategy. And that is to do your homework, to learn about what you are dealing with, and before you face that family member or your friend or whoever that may be. You got to remember that addiction is a disease that affects people of all ages, genders, nationalities, and backgrounds. It's not a sin, or a weakness of character or a moral failing. And so depending on your loved one's drug of choice, addiction may manifest in different ways. And so it's easier to learn about the nature of the disease itself. And so the better you are equipped, the better you're able to confront the addict. And so by learning how drugs affect the mind, body, and soul, you will have compassion for your loved one. And of course, you won't be so put forthright in confronting somebody that doesn't recognize that there is a problem in the first place. And then, of course, you can always, part of the addiction is denial too. So that's when they don't admit that there is a problem. And so you can always take notes. If you're closely watching your loved one, you feel that there is, something missing in their lives that where drugs have affected themselves. Like, for instance, for youth, you could be missing homework, not turning up to classes, lying to their parents, all sorts of stuff, missing birthdays, disappearing overnights, or running away. An addict will make excuses for all their actions. And so by keeping notes about what they're doing and what they're missing, it can help. The other thing is too, is you can talk to other people who have been there. The best advice for people that are seeking help, talk to somebody that's been through it. They might have other ideas. Not only will they also have other ideas and share their stories, they will also give you tips on treatment centers and professionals that could be a very, very good source of support for you as well. And of course, you can also do a family intervention or something like that. Sometimes it doesn't work, but it's there. It's another thing that you can do. You can also be kind, be someone that, we're all human at the end of the day. We may have strong emotions regarding, our family members' drug addiction in any way. So you may eventually, when it comes to that time, you may participate in family counseling. You may you may help them or support them to go to a therapist. But just keep in mind that the addict is sick, and treat them like you would someone who is sick, or who has cancer or something like that. Just be kind, be sympathetic to their pain, because we don't know what they're going through. We don't know why they are abusing drugs or alcohol or anything like that. Like I said, it happens to a lot of people of all ages. Doesn't matter who you are. We're all human. We all have our faults. We all have our transgressions within ourselves, and we all have our pain, whether we recognize it or not. And then, of course, you have to keep your expectations realistic. Sometimes interventions are not always immediately successful. And so, even if, your loved one might lash out, they might run away, they might react negatively, but at least your attempts are valued. It's the thought. It's like the phrase, the thought that counts. Even if your loved one goes to rehab, recovery is a long road. And so you as a person towards the addict has to keep the faith. And it's all about keeping those expectations realistic and showing kindness and compassion and sympathy. Their nightmare is very, very real. And like I said, you may not understand it, but at least, you have to take comfort in the fact that there are many resources out there available to help you and the family and your loved ones. And speaking with professionals and other family members who have been in the same boat, you can always learn ways of coping with the disease itself. And just know that you are not alone.
Yes, actually, let's clap with that. Yes, sadly, addicts I can just say that drug also fully contributes to the change of the behavior. Yes.
Mhm.
Like drug addiction, I can say that causes more people to feel anxious, to get more and more and more. And the more they get, the more they're going to feel some type of way about who they want. But at the end of the day, that's all they care about is the drugs that they want,
Mm-hmm.
the addiction that they want more and more. So I understand what you're saying about that. My last question is, what do you think, or who do you think can solve or find a solution to end drug addiction?
Okay, so it's normal to think, one thing I do want to emphasize here is that a common misconception surrounding drug addiction is that it solely affects the life of the user. However, the idea that they aren't hurting anybody except for themselves is an excuse that many individuals who abuse drugs use in order to justify their addiction. Drug addiction is not a one-person phenomenon, and it creates a domino effect on the lives of those around them. It's a social problem that normalizes drug use and affects individuals and their families. You might be able to prevent it by understanding why people use drugs and alcohol. You might understand the difference between drug abuse and drug addiction. You might be able to avoid the temptations of peer pressure. You know, you may have heard the expression, "You're only good as the company you keep." In reality, that statement is true. If you've got family and friends or family members who have pressured you into alcohol or drugs, avoid them. Get out of those crowds. Make new friends who practice healthier habits. Do well in school. Do be around people who are motivated to work and have goals. Develop goals and dreams for yourself. Remember that alcohol and drug use can turn into addiction quite rapidly. And no one plans on becoming a drug addict or an alcoholic. And while an active addiction, the goal possible is to get drugs and alcohol to feed the addiction, regardless of whether it is the abuse or the addiction with drugs and alcohol. Both require professional addiction treatment. You need to find the support that you need and practice healthier living habits. Exercise well, eat well. Meditation are excellent ways to avoid using drugs or alcohol. And quite often, the results that you feel from living a healthier lifestyle can help you resist the temptation to use drugs and to escape, or alcohol for that matter. A healthy body helps you cope with daily stress. If you have practiced healthy living or living healthy and managing stress, a trauma can be more easily managed. And of course, one thing I want to emphasize here, and this is a final note, that it is all about education and awareness. If we don't educate ourselves about the effects of drug and alcohol abuse and addiction, then we may not be able to cope with what we need to cope with as a family member or someone that sees another person going through addiction, or we may be addicted ourselves. So with that education, we can only enhance the knowledge that we have in order to seek that help from wherever we can get that help from. And there's plenty of resources out there. And just as a quick note, I do want to mention too, for those who have family or loved ones, or friends or workmates or anybody around you that are going through addiction, the Saavi or Hsa National Helpline is a good place to start. They have a hotline there for family members or addicts alike that you can call in anonymously, or you can talk to somebody on there. And that number is 1-800-662 HELP, or 1-800-662-4357. I also want to mention too about the National Suicide Prevention Line, and that number is 1-800-273-TALK, or 1-800-273-8255, and also the Veteran Crisis Line, which is 1-800-273-8255. Or the LGBTQ hotline, or what's called the Trevor hotline, which is 1-866-488-7386.
Yes, and that's actually my goal, is to spread awareness, and that's the topic actually today. So thank you, Katie. Moving on to Dean Perry. How do you feel drug addiction affects society as a whole?
Wow, that's a loaded question that I could spend a long time answering, but I'm going to personalize it, because when you say society, let's talk about the school environment so we can stay within the context of our relationship. Drug addiction, when it impacts a young person or the adults, tend to negatively impact not only the family directly, but also their social circumstances, their social environment, their peers. And what we need to understand, and I'm glad that you're taking on this topic, is that similar to, Reverend Karma stated, there's a lot of impact and effects. So I won't recant that or go over that. But what I will say is in a school environment, when we talk about our learning, when we talk about young people being able to kind of focus in on what's in front of them and be an active participant in their daily environment, sometimes whether they are the person who is experiencing addiction personally or they're experiencing it in regards to their family, it takes a toll on the individual. And so through this conversation, I want viewers to understand that, it's one thing to talk about the possibilities and the potential trendy behavior that a person who is experiencing drug addiction experiences. But what I also want to talk about is how those folk who are impacted by those choices, how they have to, find some resolution and find some peace within themselves, knowing that oftentimes there's not too much that you can do because it's a journey that person or those individuals have to go through, and professional help is ultimately needed. And it tends to go outside the bounds of what the child can, manifest into help with. So when you say society, I'm gonna break society down and focus specifically on institutions of educational or higher learning, because I see the impact of a lot of young people having to go through that in their homes. And it's just not a good experience for all involved. And that person, by law has to come to school the next day. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's a tough scenario to kind of be, emboldened by, negativity, and know that you got to push that aside so you can be a good scholar in class and do well in school. Like, it's a tough balance. It's a great question.
Now I'm gonna ask you another question.
Sure.
Actually, like I agree with you about like the family wise and how like everybody's there. And yes, everyone does have the issue, and educator can affect that. I want to say, how does education affect drug abuse in the mental health to collaborate? You can say with the scholars. Let's say at school or at the family wise, we could say that.
Okay, so I think that as was identified before, oftentimes one issue, be it the mental illness or drug abuse, kind of have a similar kind of connection, but they're independent. And rarely does it, comorbidity is what was talked about. And again, I don't want to use technical terms like that because I want you to really understand what I'm saying. At some point, there are two pillars of things that are happening, and sometimes they collide like a car, right? And what is called gaper delay, for those adults who know this, right? When you see a car accident, people tend to slow down and watch what's happening, but we really don't understand what happened prior to the accident. I submit to you, with mental illness and drug abuse, what tends to happen is that you got two colliding things happening at the same time. And when they crash, oftentimes we see the carnage, we see the impact, but we don't understand why it's there. And so one of the things that we have to do is to become more knowledgeable about them independently. We have to, gain better awareness, and I'm glad you're doing research on this subject matter. We have to know that it impacts millions and millions of people throughout this country yearly, and it's not a scenario or situation that one family member or one individual is going through on their own. With that said, it doesn't dismiss the pain and the hurt that people experience. It does not quail what somebody feels when they know that they got to go home to something where everything is just not right. And whether there's yelling or screaming, or where there's this inconsistency on behavior, that must be very difficult for a child or a young person to experience daily, let alone once in their lifetime. And so we have to come up with better ways to kind of be there for young people. We have to come up with better ways to be there for adults, because the reality of the situation is all the data talks about what is reported. It doesn't talk about what goes unreported, right? It doesn't talk about the number of people that refuse to go to treatment, refuse to seek help, who are homeless, but refuse to be in a survey that documents their existence. Like, there's a lot more people than the millions that are identified from the Census Bureau to a lot of other recovery agencies. There's a lot more folk that are going through this, unfortunately, negative issue. And so, but there's hope. And I got a lot of real examples on that hope, because I've been blessed to work with young people and families for decades to make sure that they've developed strategies and skills to not only cope with what they're experiencing, but also to get beyond coping with it and to really master and understand what they're experiencing. It's a great question.
Actually, that's a good question too, because I want you to collaborate on that. Have you ever dealt with someone or who suffers with addiction or drug abuse that may affect you, how like a certain way that you just want to help them put everything to aside and take care of them?
Most definitely. So in my family, I've grown up and still experiencing people who have, mental illness and drug abuse. And, I can personally say, not just as a professional only, but personally, it's very difficult to know that people around you and people that are close to you are dealing with something that you just sometimes just have to watch them go through, and they have to seek help outside of you. And I want to really stress this point. Oftentimes people who have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience feel like they're the answer. But imagine being in a position where you're not. Imagine being in a position where your words and phrases are not what that person needs in order for them to get to another level of learning and growth. And that is tough for the individual like myself who tries to help folk. And at the end of the day, we have to develop a network of resources that really impact scholars in a way that sometimes they're not even understanding. One of the things that was identified with the Reverend was talking about peer pressure. Peer pressure is a huge reality that impacts our scholars. And so making sure that folk understand the impact of peer pressure, not just to say it, but understand the impact of peer pressure. Hopefully through time and education, they can really understand that it's more than just a word or a belief or an idea or a concept. We're talking about habits. We're talking about trend behavior. We're talking about, a lifestyle that tends to turn negative and against a person who may be brilliant, who may be a good person, but because they're trying to be along with the get along gang, right? And they're now getting into cars and they're going into places and spaces where, they're not, they shouldn't be. And then what tends to happen is, like, unfortunately, I heard yesterday, and I'm not saying this is because of drug addiction, I'm just saying because of the crowd that you're in sometimes, literally a young man that I've known for a long time no longer is on this planet as of yesterday. And so there are real consequences to being in situations and circumstances that oftentimes are not good for you. So, it's one thing to survive a moment, it's another thing to not go near it. Like, but when you are dealing with addiction and when you're dealing with mental illness, we got things that happen in your brain, and dopamine tends to overflow, and then all of a sudden you're now starting to try to meet that high or those higher level of experiences. And what tends to happen is that you're going down a path that ultimately is not good for you. And so as a clinician for, again, many decades and having many degrees and currently in a doctorate program, at the end of the day, those are not the answer, right? Because people are still suffering through many things, and millions of people daily are going through realities that oftentimes they have to learn how to help themselves. And that's the hardest thing in this process to do. When you really look at the change process, the first element of the change process is contemplation. And what oftentimes happen is that people sit there and consider, what, should I do this? And oftentimes those who are considering it tend to be, yes, this is the reason why. And so to have judgment about why they feel like this is the reason why that they're making decisions that are not in their best interest is a different conversation. And that's a moral reality that we should never be on. But we got to help young people to identify, and adults, right? We got to help young people and adults to realize that, what's behind the curtain is not worth the contemplation. It's not worth the impact that it has on the family and or the individual. And so really bringing people, and bringing life into existence and bringing consciousness to life, that's what we got to learn how to do. And that's a yeoman's job that young ladies and young men are working on daily, like the professionals that we have here on this call. So I really do appreciate hearing, the sound advice that I've heard thus far.
I just want to say that is such a powerful point that you made. And the choice matter is that, like, we do feel bad for the kid, we feel sorry for that kid. It's sad that the kid had to go very early, and I feel very bad for him. I think all of us have to say that loved ones, parents don't want the kids to do such things. They want the kids to feel happy, feel love. But seeing someone from like point of view or hearing from point of view is very heartbroken. But I just want to say that your speech is very, very powerful. And like, I understand how like the issues you had and how like the choices people made, the choices that you made meant to help that poor student, to help all the kids around you, especially the programs that you gave us from like 9th grade to now. Like, I learned so much from the programs that you guys taught us at
Paige, you
Capital
being
Prep, and I
nice,
feel
and
so
it's being
happy.
recorded, so I appreciate you.
No, when the thing you always say is that we'll always change the world. And what
That's
I'm
right.
doing now is trying to change the world right now.
Awesome.
You can say hi to everyone. Like, I feel so bad for that student. I feel bad for you, how so much empathy that you have to take care of that poor student, take care of so much of us, leading us, being like a father to us, uncle, father. Like, we feel so happy for that. And I want to say thank you for actually being on this show. I'm very proud of you.
And
And
so,
thank you for being
Paige,
my principal.
well, I'm not the principal because that I would be blessed to be that, but I'm the dean, right? One day that's going to happen. I promise you, one day it's going to happen. So you speaking into existence, sure, quicker than what you think. But what I can say is this. So this morning when I was speaking to all the 9th and 10th graders and talking about similar issues that we're talking about now, and the title of it was called Mental Health 101. And it just so happened, because I don't believe in coincidences, one of my clients of 7 years called me while I was presenting to over 50 people. And I put him on speaker and I said, we're going to have real conversation about things that we're talking about right now. And the things that we were talking about was anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation. And literally everybody was in awe because this young man who they never thought would call, it wasn't like I staged it. I know I'm good, but I ain't that good, right? And so when he called and we literally had some open dialogue about some of the things that he was going through, they was like, oh my goodness. And the reason why I bring this up, because it was a great moment for our kids to really see that some of the things that they experiencing and didn't want to talk about, other people are experiencing. So that's number one. Two, though, it's different when, a person like myself or the adults involved are giving advice all the time and trying to help and trying to guide. It's different than having a peer say, you know what, I know what you're talking about because I've been through this too. Or someone that may be 5 or 6 years older to be like, you really don't want to go down that path because, at one point, and this is the God's honest truth, he was living in a tent outside with his girlfriend in the snow. That's how severe his anxieties and his depressions and things that he was going through took him, because he didn't have the physical resources that you're blessed to have to support him as an individual. He didn't have the family in his life, and he doesn't have the family in his life to be there and to guide him through some of the social circumstances that we're talking about in terms of drug abuse and mental illness. He just didn't have that. And so, I've been blessed to maintain and sustain this relationship with him because every day he teaches me, right? He teaches me on how someone really can find hope in all this HELL. Notice I didn't say nothing wrong. I just spelled it. Like, he's literally finding a way to find, some buoyancy and to not only float sometimes, but to swim towards shore and find happiness in his life. And so, with all that is struggling and very difficult to deal with, with the topic that you're talking about in terms of drug abuse and mental health illness and issues, I need for everyone in the audience to know that there's not only hope, but there's opportunity to grow and to learn from these realities, to see yourself as a productive citizen that is helping other people, be it your family, yourself, or just friends. You can overcome these obstacles, but it's not easy. It is not easy. When you have a disease, that's more than a conversation, it's more than a notion, but it's possible because we have real examples of that as well in this world. And I'm hoping over time, when you seek the professional assistance, and I'm talking to the audience, when you seek the professional assistance and you do it with fidelity, you do it with care, and you do it with love, you will find the answers to your questions.
That's a great point, actually. Very great point. I agree with you on everything. Children and adults all teach one another, like another lesson over and over. Sometimes children will teach the parents, parents will teach the teachers. Well, children, I can say. But I think that education is so much more to children and adults because, like, you learn throughout the whole entire mindset of going to school. So I find it like it's a great point, very good point. So I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so very much. I actually have one more question for you,
You're more than welcome to ask.
if you don't mind. How do you feel about the scholars coming to you about the issue? Do you talk to the parents with the scholar, or do you put the scholar separate? I want to know the question about that.
Well, I've been blessed to establish good relationships with our peers and with your peers, excuse me, and scholars in our school. Prior to coming to our school, I was in the 7th largest school district in the country and had solid relationships with people. And so it is, and I'm saying that to say that you have to be a help seeker, with skill set. You have to be someone that is in tune with young people in order for them to come to you. And so this is my destiny. I will have my own school one day because I know that I can guide folk academically, emotionally, and socially through processes that oftentimes schools don't deal with. I know I can. I've done it, right? And I want to be in a position to do it on a grander scale. And I've been blessed to do that here at Capital Prep. So when you say, how do I feel? It's a life mission for me. I know that for as long as I'm alive and able to breathe and talk, that I'm going to be helping young people and families. And so I welcome it because I know that I'm going to not only be a sound resource, but I'm going to guide them to resources when I can't be available. Because the reality of the situation is when we talk about 19% of the people who reported using illicit drugs in 2018, and when we talk about 35% of minors from 8th, 10th, and 12th grade reported using illicit drugs, when we talk about 12% of people ages 12 and over reporting using illicit drugs, like those are people, right? It's not just Bridgeport. Those are national statistics, right? When you talk about 47% of all young people using illegal drugs, like that's not just an area. And so we need, skilled folk like everybody that's on this call. We need caring people like everyone that is on this call and on the Zoom. We need invested people who have the skill set to navigate any individual family through a process that's oftentimes wrought with a lot of complexity, wrought with a lot of energy and inconsistencies and a lot of anger and depression, going highs and lows and so many things, because again, trying to meet the highs of your dopamine, that part in your brain that tells you we need more excitement. So find a way to do it. We have to work diligently to make sure that young people and families have the resources and skills and tools to navigate this situation that nationally, because you asked the question earlier, how is it possible to end it? I'm going to frankly say no, right? Because at the end of the day, drug addiction is so strong, mental illness is so strong that no pill or will just ends it like it's over. It's not how this works. You got to learn how to cope. You got to learn how to find mechanisms to get past the moment. And then you got to learn how to celebrate yourself and your wins. And oftentimes that may sound easy, but it's very complex to do that because oftentimes people who are self-medicating are doing it because they don't want to see themselves at all. They don't like their images. They don't like the way they sound. They don't like the way they look. They don't like how they're impacting other people. And so oftentimes people try to deaden that sentence as opposed to realizing that they're gifts, just like we all are, just like you are. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. We do. But we all have to know that not only are they there, but we got to cherish them. And so you asked a loaded question, and I can go on again for days, but I want to keep it in a space where you really understand what I'm saying, Paige, and that is that this is a complex conversation. And I can rattle off all the kind of processes that people go through, and you'll be like, huh, what are you talking about? Only know this. There is a path to being more than just buoyant. I mean, just floating, right? When you go into a pool and you got that life jacket on and you're like, whoa, I'm floating. We can do more than that. But it starts with at least knowing that you can float. And that's what tends to happen, is that young people and adults don't feel like they can float, and they feel like they want to drown. They want to give up, but we have to be the life preserver to make sure that young people have another day, another moment, another chance to figure this out so we can all celebrate your greatness and everyone else. So again, I really do appreciate you having a real, honest, open conversation. We got some real professionals here that are giving some great sound advice that hopefully the listeners will take into account, and I'm just trying to give a different element of that conversation, because oftentimes we lose track of the human beings that are experiencing some real human issues. Thank you.
Thank you for that question and great point. I agree with you 100%. My mom wants actually ask you a question, if that's okay.
Oh, most definitely. Mom knows she can say anything to me. What's going on, Mom?
Okay, so I know we discussed and we touched on how scholars and you work together in, kind of combating this terrible, terrible addiction or behaviors or feelings or desires or whatever we want to call it, right? Because to each their own, some people express it differently. So my question is, and I think it's a really great question because what people don't understand is educators, as well as parents, as well as friends, neighbors, we all, as a community, we all experience and see and feel and empathize and sympathize with the individual when they're going through this because it impacts us as much as it impacts them. Unfortunately, they're the ones that are putting the toxicities within their body, so they are getting the worser end of it, yes. But my question is so when it comes to your scholars, and let's say they come to you personally because you have such a great bond with them, because some students and teachers create a bond that is beyond understandable. It is such a great connection. Um, so when they do come to you and they tell you, please don't tell my parents, please don't reach out to anybody, I'm coming to you because I trust you and I'm coming to you for that help. How do you navigate that situation? Because by law, we do have to inform the families and parents, etc., because the child is a minor. But then there's that trust issue that they've built up for so long, and now it's weighing on the line, and that's hard for educators to navigate that. So how would you navigate that if you were in that position?
Most definitely. So first of all, I've been in that position many times over. And the one thing about any social ill, but particularly mental illness and drug addiction, is that there's got to be a level of honesty and forthrightness. Everyone who comes to me, particularly with something serious, whether it's a parent, scholar, or somebody in the community, prior to even working here for 3 years, is that people have to know that you're a mandated reporter. I am, like all of us here, depending on the setting, we are mandated reporters. And so that's without question. We are responsible for identifying different issues, or saying things to the proper people to make sure that the appropriate resources are there for everyone's protection. But that's not like a whipping stick. That's not like, saying, okay, so now you shouldn't tell me anything. My relationship, and I've been blessed, has been strong with many young people and families. They'll be like, okay, so what does that mean? I'll be like, okay, now know that if you go down that path and you say all that other stuff that I think you're going to say, then I have to report it. It doesn't mean that we have to stop having a conversation, but it means that at some point I have to get the authorities involved just so we can make sure that there are no social ills going on, and that you got the appropriate resources so that they can navigate and help you through it. And then after that, you can come back to my office. And so, but what that does is it then puts the onus on the scholar and the family. It doesn't take it away from me and the school. But what it says is, okay, so it's not just about Dean Perry or the other folk in the school who have 5 million things to do. And some scholars will be like, oh, well, I'm not going to go to him because he's always busy. They'll be like, okay, but wait a minute. He got me the proper resources. He put folk and professionals in place and in spaces. So now I can see them regularly. And now I have a different kind of, itinerary in regards to my day. So I got resources embedded into my day so I can become better at navigating the situation. And oftentimes, and I'll say this, and it's a great question, oftentimes what we have to do is to know that we're not the answer, and that's okay. Right? We may be the stopgap in the process, but there may be other people that is needed and necessary to be that steady and consistent kind of, door that they can go through and kind of experience what they have to go through and get the therapy and the tools and strategies that they need in order to be successful with managing those scenarios. So, I kind of see myself to some degree, contrary to some people's belief, as the person who kind of ushers folk to the next level of resources, right? Because if I was in my practice, if I was in my organization, then they would be with me, for the duration, and I wouldn't seek outside assistance. But I can't do that here. And so what I got to do is to hear folk. I got to, really kind of synthesize the data and then put people in the right perspective. And we have a social worker in our school. We have a lot of other resources that are directly in our school that I would funnel them to. So I know that I got more hands on coming from different perspectives to really help that scholar and the families navigate situations. Just there's no coincidence that these things are happening routinely. at least once or twice a week. And the reality situation is not because there's so much social ill within our community, but there's so many need for resources and assistance, and people who really find the courage, and I'm not saying it in a negative or bad way, but finding the courage to say, you know what, let me go to another adult, as opposed to just dealing with this myself. When they choose to stand up and be more accountable to saying, the answer hasn't been within myself and my family, let me seek resources somewhere else. In anyone's home, you have to know that the issue oftentimes is bigger than your own perspective. And so for me, I try to make folk understand that, and I really then try to surround them with the love and the technical resources to really help them. So I welcome those moments, because I know that I can't be the answer, and I'm comfortable with that, because the answer lies within the person that is going through it. But it's our job as clinicians, as people who are professionals, to help them help themselves. And so I don't take that on as my own issue, because it's not their own issue. It's a bigger issue. It's a broader issue. Addiction got everything to do with biology and psychosocial realities. Like it's, but again, I'm not going to have that conversation here, because it's not important. What's important is that we got people that are struggling, right? And we got people that are struggling, and we got great folk here that can help. And so if you are in need of assistance, please make sure that you reach out to your local officials. If you don't have the resources in your home, and there was a lot of data that was already given, there was a lot of numbers that was already given, and I can do the same, but 211 is oftentimes the best. It's not DCF. 211 is the place where you can get resources within your community, regardless of where you live. And then from there, they will guide you. It's not a DCF referral. It's two different things, but 211 is the state kind of hotline. So I definitely would recommend that to add to the other numbers that we're given.
No, thank you for answering that, because it's a really big misconception that parents or individuals have that don't really understand a school structure or what it really is to be a mandated reporter. And they look at it as like, well, you sold my child out, or you did this. No, it's not that. What we are doing is doing the best thing we can by giving you that support, giving you that outlet, involving individuals that we know that have the means, like you stated, the resources that can help you address the situation in a much bigger way. We can only, it starts here, yes, because you came to me personally and confided in me, but it doesn't end with me. And that's what it is. It's a journey, and I'm willing to hold your hand and take the journey with you. And that's what people don't understand. They like to place blame, and and that's part of the denial aspect of things. People go into denial. They go through different stages, and unfortunately, that really pushes back the situation versus help it in many ways. But it's an emotional roller coaster that's felt by everyone involved, including the individual. And many people so far that have spoken, including Paige, has brought up the whole point of the topic, that we have to remember that these individuals were never like this. They weren't, this is not something they chose to do. Yes, choices are your main thing. You make those choices, and at some point in their life, they chose this path for whatever reason. And we have to remember that they're people at the end of the day who suffer, who feel, who hurt, and who are pretty much at the mercy of this addiction. So by having these supports in play, it really speaks the integrity of the educational system, as well as the community that we all are a part of. Because like somebody mentioned in the comments, because I'm actually reading the comments as we're going and responding to my best of my ability, because we do have right now 17 viewers that are actively commenting, so I'm doing my best to engage in them. But they've made 110% great comments when I say revolving around this topic, that they even said, it takes a village. And that's what we need to understand. The village is like the community we live in, the society we live in, and that encompasses everybody, from your neighbors, your friends, your family, your educators, your professionals. And we got to remember that. So we got to learn how to take out that negative aspect of the whys and the feelings of just, oh my God, the whole world's against us, and really recognize that, no, it's not that. We're here as a whole, supporting you and rising you up. And that's what it's about. So thank you for explaining that question, because like I said, a lot of people have that negative feedback that they give the school, because they think that they're wrong for involving these individuals, when in reality, they're doing the right thing. So thank you for that.
The last thing I'll say is, I'll be wrong all day if I'm saving a life. I'll be wrong all the time.
I 100% agree with you, and that's my motto, and that's what Paige and I live by, is that, what? If we could do anything and everything in our power to help save somebody, or help them to have a better existence, whether it's giving them money, whether it's giving them the shirt off our back, whether it's feeding them a meal, whatever it may be, giving them the resources they need, helping them in the right direction. That's what we're here for. At the end of the day, we all coexist on this great place we call Earth. And we got to remember that yes, we all have individual personalities, but we all rely on each other one way or another. So it is important. So I 100% agree with you. I'm going to turn it back over to Paige as we move along. So thank you. Thank you guys in the comments. You have great comments. I am doing my best to get to your comments so you guys know. Thank you for supporting Paige. And I'm turning it back over to the Mad Hatter.
Thank you, Amanda and my mom. Thank you, Dean Perry, for answering all the questions.
You're welcome.
And like every point that you made across is a great point. Everybody should see what the world, how we want to see it. Just like my mom said, like, no matter what, we'll always support everyone. And I think that it's a great thing that I actually did this topic because it speaks out more to me to show people how much drug addiction, drug abuse can actually hurt someone. And I try to change that. I really am trying to change that. So I want to say thank you for answering all my questions. The next guest I have is Donna. And I want to say, how do you feel drug addiction affects society as a whole?
I think in every way imaginable, whether it is physical, social, emotional, financial, the heart and core of a family structure, it starts at the top and rolls its way downhill, and nobody kind of comes out of it unscathed if you know someone who's close to you who struggles with addiction in whatever form that comes in, whether it's a substance, whether it's a specific like drugs or alcohol, codependency on a person, whatever. Addiction comes in many forms, as we know. So I think that, I think it definitely impacts because it's everywhere. And to a degree, I think as a society, we've kind of gotten to become complacent in our desensitization of it, of seeing it everywhere all the time. You see shows, especially if they're focused in a city environment, where you see people in the background, homeless people, and or them people who are doing podcasts even on YouTube, saying, "Oh yeah, we were looking in this trash can for something. Go watch out for needles. Ha ha ha." No, I'm sorry, that's not funny. Or finding needles on beaches, or people finding paraphernalia. And I know even on a personal level, someone very close to me reported someone they knew to the police that there was paraphernalia in this house that was indicative of a very, very bad substance. And the police said, yeah, we'll get to it. And they never went back to it. So, it's kind of a numbing down of the impact of it. And I think that this environment that you've created with us here tonight is bringing it more to the forefront and needs to happen more often.
You make a great point. And there are some shows that shows people smoking, that shows kids doing bad things. And you have some parents who allow it, and some parents is like, what are you doing? I didn't teach you like that. Like, why are you acting like a certain way? What happened to you? So I agree on that 100%. The next question is, how do you think drug abuse and mental health correlate to one another?
That's a kind of also a complicated issue, in that most people who suffer from mental health issues, they tend to have very, very low self-esteem, and coming from the family environment onward, they grow up being misunderstood, or it's a genetic thing where mental illness can run in families, to where it's a learned thing of how to cope with it as going forward in their lives. They see their parents coping with their deficiencies by numbing it and self-medicating behaviors, and they teach their kids that children really do live what they learn in a number of different ways, including learning to self-medicate, and to going forward from not seeking treatment because, hey, these substances make us not care. They make us feel better. And you find your crew, so to speak, of people that accept you for you and don't sit and pick apart and say and come at you saying, hey, I recognize that you're dealing with this mental illness, or you're bipolar, you're depressed, but we take you at face value as you, and they get to be okay with that. And that may be the first time that that person who's dealing with mental health issues has ever encountered that acceptance. And so if that becomes kind of a bonding agent of doing different substances together and having that acceptance for the first time in their lives, and many times it becomes like almost a sub family to them. So treating mental health issues on that, and then they get feeling better, so then they view it as, I don't have the problem, you do. You're the one who has the issue. You're the one who keeps coming at me seeing this as a problem. I'm good. I'm fine. I don't have any problems. Not recognizing that the drugs and alcohol, substances of whatever kind they're using, are masking the symptoms that are preventing them from stepping outside of the box that they're living in, to seeing it accurately of how it's impacting their lives and the lives of those around you. Because when you have any form of addiction, no matter what it is, what substance you're addicted to, the fallout from that is like a nuclear bomb going off. There is nothing around you that is untouched. Anybody close to you is going to be impacted by that. Whether it's, hey, I got in your purse when your back was turned and lopped $20 off your mom. Hey, hope you don't mind, so I can go score another dime bag. Or, going out and hanging out and skipping out on curfew and leaving your family wondering, where are you? Because you didn't come home tonight. And are you even still alive? To, the human sex trade stuff that goes on out there of, offering these people, especially young girls, but it happens with boys as well, a faux family, so to speak, environment of, hey, we'll take care of you, come with us, and then giving them and introducing them to a very dark world to kind of not notice what's going on because they're compromised, because they may have mental health issues going on. So yeah, it's a big fallout.
There's actually some issues when children talk to the parents. And like you said, there's curfew. Most kids will laugh about it and tell the parents, shut up, leave me alone. Like, why are you bothering me? I don't care. And it's very disrespectful because like the parents are trying to figure out, what are you doing for your life? What are you trying to lead to? Like, are you trying to go on this dark path? Because laughing at a sort of situation isn't funny at all. Like, you don't know what might happen to you. Like, the issues I have with you, we can talk about it. There's like a whole bunch of therapy you can go to too. I think that most kids sometimes laugh at a situation that shouldn't be funny, and they think that parents would not say anything about it, but most parents would say something. It's just the kids will probably hit them, throw stuff at them, yell at them, or leave the house and act like nothing never happened. So I agree with you on that 100%.
It can be a multi-generational problem too, especially in families that are also dealing with low education, poverty situations, etc., where, again, kids get taught from their parents who get taught from their parents. So the parents are, each generation starts out always wanting to do better with your children than what was done with you. However, you also live what you learn. And so if the skills that you were given to growing up and seeing, hey, this is how you handle this situation. And I know in my personal life, again, substance abuse issues are rampant. It was everywhere growing up. I mean, so many of my relatives struggle with this. And again, I have as well. And I had the attitude of, there was like family members and parents, they were alcoholics, and it was yelling at me, you need to do this, you need to do this, but then hey, you're doing this, so why isn't it okay for me? And as a teenager, you think you have all the answers, you know what's right, you're finding out who you are in your life. So you're like, where do you get off telling me? And but you're doing this, so why can't I? And that was very much my attitude as a teenager who had grown up in a poverty situation and lower education levels, where even though my mom was trying to make things better for us and going to further her education, she still struggled with things, her own issues as well. And, so when I would get yelled at for coming home drunk, it was kind of like, yeah, but I'm still getting up to go to school the next day. I'm working part-time. I'm passing everything. So what's the problem? I'm a functioning alcoholic, just like you. That was the attitude. Or if I skipped out on curfew, so what? I'm okay. I'm not driving around or taking other chances I could be doing. So what's wrong with this? And a lot of kids who grow up in that kind of environment have that attitude of, again, living what they're taught. They're not taught better skills. I think overall, many parents today they've learned more about the topics to stay more involved with their children's lives, to stay more aware of what's going on in social media, what's going on with your friends in general. And hey, how was your day? But there's still, and I know from the families I used to work with, many people call it DCF, in many other places. In my area, it's called the Department of Social Services. They are, again, undereducated. Many of them dropped out of high school. They got pregnant as teenagers and then had a gaggle of kids, and they're working a minimum wage job and all the stress that can promote, and having no self-esteem themselves, and then going onward to teach the children the same things of how to cope they were taught. So the kids, they saw their parents smoking, cigarettes all the time and having beer in the fridge all the time and being a functioning alcoholic. Or if you're addicted to people, having a string of people through the house that don't belong in a family situation. And so it's learning new coping skills to handle all that stuff going forward. And that's what helped me, I think, in my job and in the social work field, was to say, hey, I came from this, right where you are right now. I came for this, but through choices, you can be different. You can learn other ways. Let me help you. And if some people, they're either ready for that help or not, but having that awareness, like Mr. Perry was talking about, knowing the resources that are out there in your community. You can't force people to change if they're not ready to and they don't want to. It's not going to work. You're going to be banging your head against the wall trying to get somebody to see, hey, you got a problem and this is why. It's better to take overall stance to say, hey, I'm here for you. And I love you enough and I care about you enough that I want to see what's best for you. But I'm here to help you and walk with you through this journey. If you're going to be brave enough to take it, but I can't make you. So I think that, it's a multifaceted issue all the way around. And I think, again, you doing a show like this tonight, bringing the focus back onto this issue and letting people know, hey, we've all dealt with this in some way, because I don't think there's a single one of us who is viewing this or on the show tonight, even as guests, who have not experienced the firsthand effects about this in some way.
Great, thank you.
I do want to say thank you for that. I really do agree with you. I have one more question, if you don't mind.
No, of course.
What do you think, who do you think can solve or end of drug addiction?
I definitely agree with it takes a village to raise a child mentality, that as a community, everybody has to be supportive of it and to get, non-desensitized to the issue. Don't turn your head away. Don't put people into different boxes of, oh, they're just homeless or they're mentally ill, so, what else do you expect? Instead, say, what can I do to help? And bring attention to this. Going to volunteer within your community, even from a young age, to start at that level. And I know because I was a school-based caseworker, to where, yes, I was a caseworker for social services, but I was school-based. And so I got to see firsthand how much things had changed from when I was in school compared to nowadays. And there was much more likelihood for the school community to step back and say, what else is going on in this child's life that could be impacting this, instead of just seeing it from the education standpoint only? What else can be impacting their success? And to be willing, hey, what can we do to help that? Whereas back when I was in high school, I think I only had literally one person who was my guidance counselor who took notice that there might be something else going on in my family other than the face value of, I'm a punk kid and I'm living up to my expectations of being a punk kid, and I'm going to drop out at 16 and be pregnant and, go nowhere fast. She took the time to look further and look beyond and care. And I never forgot that. And that's where the place I try to operate from, even with the youth I worked with, because I could have, again, it was being assigned to families, but all the children in the family, no matter their age, 18 on down. So if the teenagers, especially, yes, they may come across like, we're not listening and we don't want to hear that and you're full of blah, blah, blah. But I had people come back later who are now adults saying, you might be surprised how much we did hear, Donna. And yeah, we were listening. And I was like, really? You heard that? That's great. Great. Now go on and pass it on to somebody else. But I think that teamwork mentality of being a support system as a whole, don't put people into boxes of just writing them off that it's not your problem and only be worried about your own little bubble and that's it, and recognizing that the world is only going to get better and change if we all work together to make it happen and not turn our backs to it. So from whatever point of view you are coming from, whether it's a stay-at-home mom to the business dad on Wall Street to the homeless person on the street spending the night in a box with their child or homeless shelter, doesn't matter. It's that recognition that we're in it together, and let's be a support to each other rather than being so quick to judge. Come together as a team to help one another to become more, be better, learn a better way of doing things, because what we're taught isn't always the best way. And all we can do is give someone a toolbox, but it's up to them to pick up the tools and use them for any level of substance abuse or addiction. That's all we can do, but you can also be there to encourage them. And even if other family members I have who are just leaving their teen years, even though I would be biting my tongue of what I wanted to say to them, I kept it more neutral and accepting of them I want to hyper focus on that part of them, recognizing, hey, you're more than that. And let's build up your self-esteem so you care enough about you to try to want to make this be better for yourself. And I'm here for you, just to listen, just to be a support to you. And I will be your biggest cheerleader in the world. I'm always here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I think that's more adults need to be that to their young people in their lives, not so hypercritical or, hey, let's buy you the newest games console system rather than go spend time with you and, be there and present in the now moments of our lives, because it goes by too quick. And everybody says that your kids grow up so fast. Well, yeah, you really do. You get one shot at it with being a parent with each child to see them grow up. There's no do-over button that we can hit to erase something that once it's done as a parent. So coming together as a community, as a society, as a country, as a world to make this better, that's the only way I think it's gonna get better. But I have hope.
I agree that 100%. I agree with that so much. Like
Auntie
there
Donna
was a saying
knows.
though. There was a saying, teach the kids while they're young. Well, my mom
Mhm.
was an EMT. My grandpa was EMT. My father, my aunt, my uncle, my whole family was an EMT. And the first thing
Mhm.
mom taught us, she said that if if she's sick or if something's happened to her, try to use this method. What is the CPR method too? She said that if you see one of your family members, or if you see anyone that you know, or the kids at school have issues like that, choking on something, try to be their savior, try to be their hero. So my mom taught us growing up is to be someone else's hero. She taught me, she was my hero growing up. She would give us, the only thing she would give us is, she said, here's your technology, get 5 minutes technology, go learn. Get 5 minutes outside, go learn. Like everything she taught us is so much reflect off of me, and you could tell it reflect off of me because I'm on her podcast with her. So it's like you
Yeah,
can tell how much it is
absolutely.
that reflect off of me. Like
Absolutely. And that
capital
you are a reflection of how you were raised as well, I think. And that shows. And, you know, I again admire your bravery in doing this tonight to bring the attention to it. Not just, I think that even if it wasn't a school project, you would consider taking it on because that's the kind of person you are and who you've been taught to be. And that's something to be proud of. And so, you know, I look forward to the future with hope of seeing what footsteps you're going to walk in to make your own trail and see where that trail takes you in your life, because you're off to a phenomenal start, young lady. And I think, you know, your mom has everything to be proud of, but you do too. You should be proud of yourself. So
Thank you. It's just like the years of like being at Capital have taught me so much because we used to have this debate a lot as to for school government, and I was going to go for it, but I was like, wait, do not go for it. See what path you want to go to. And it was assigned for college classes, and I would take all the college classes. I went to criminal justice. I went to sociology. It taught me a lot. And the reason why I want to stick to this topic is that you learn so much. And it's like, wow, I wish I can go back to what I learned because most time I'll forget about things that I can't remember. And it's like that memory loss will like hit you and it's like, oh no, I lost that. So like I understand where you're coming from because like New York was so like it was a struggle for me. And my mom told the teachers, hey, listen, they're going to move, they're going to come up to where we are now. It's like the biggest impact that it made on me is that I never had friends from like New York. So it's like from coming here, it made so much impact on me. And it's like going to college early, it was the best decision I ever made. So I want to say thank you for that. And thank you.
I do have a question for you, if that's okay, really quickly.
No, that's fine.
What is like, do you find that there is any peer pressure put on you from your crowd of people that you are friends with regarding substance abuse, use, or addiction? Like, is vaping a thing? Is it, you know, is smoking still a thing to do because it's cool to do? I know that up here because I'm in mid-state New York, upstate New York, so I'm just kind of right next door to you guys by a few hours. There was such a hard hit of with, you know, my daughter isn't supremely young, isn't supremely older than you, but man, the anti-smoking stuff that happened within this school, that just ran over everything. And a lot of her generation are, even if they come from a family of people who smoke, they don't do it. Or, you know, even with substances of any kind, they don't do it because of how hard they were hit within school. So how do you find that that's impacted you in your life amongst your peers? Is there like a party crowd? Is there, you know, overall as a whole, you guys just don't even go there? Or how does that play out for you guys?
There will be dramas with me and my friends here and there. Mostly kids will have a lot of vaping around where they want to go. Most of the kids will go home and vape and they'll post it on YouTube, anything they find. Social media, I swear, changes people a lot. You got all those influencers and everything. And I think that what made an impact on me is that my friends had to go through issues that they never want to go to, and they always come to me. And I would always talk to my mom, like, Mom, what am I supposed to do with this situation? Should I just leave them? Should I just help them? Like, I'm stressed out. And she always told me, just sit, think about what you want to do. And yes, that is true. Kids do that a lot. Kids will come to their parents, but most time they're scared because they don't know what the parents going to do to them. So that's why they go to their friends. Usually they don't have friends, they'll have fake friends. They'll have people who try to set them up. Like at the end of the day, I think towards me, there's like drama. My whole entire school year was like a lot of drama around my friends, but that all changed. They fixed themselves, they went to therapy, and I told them that no matter who I am, I will always stand up for you because that's my principal, Mr. Dean Perry. He's right there. I'm always standing up for people. I was a mentor for the kids at my school. I done so much for everyone that I really won what is it, a humanitarian award around the whole entire Connecticut, around anywhere. I beat everyone. And I want to show people that you have so much ahead of you and you choose to waste it on drugs, on addiction. For what reason? Is it to hurt yourself or to make yourself look bad? Like, what you're trying to do? I think in this world, everyone is smart, but they don't show it. And that's what we need. We need people to show who they are, show what talents they have, what skills they have. And I agree with you about like a lot of kids, they do vape. They try to get other kids to join in them. And I find that sad and I find it harmful to like everyone because we always need that one person by your side. And they always say, oh, God is with you. God is this. But at the end of the day, who's on your side then? Are you like, what are you trying to do to yourself? Are you trying to hurt yourself even more, even though you said God is on your side? You think God wants that for you? So I think like I would teach that. You're muted.
Silly me, sorry. I think a lot of people, it's not so much of a thought process of I'm hurting myself. It's that the pain I feel because of my experiences or my perceived experiences are so bad that I can't cope with it, but I don't have any other skills. Or I don't know how else to handle it. So if I make myself numb, it doesn't hurt anymore. And again, you kind of find like the party crowd, etc., to surround yourself with, and they accept you and they support you, even if it's a really unhealthy support system, obviously, and where they're encouraging you to do this stuff. But it may be the first time that person is feeling a family environment or that level of acceptance that they didn't get from their own biological home family. I ran into that with so many youths that I used to work with, of just, hey, this feels good, but hey, these are my peeps and they got my back and they're going to be there for me. When really the partying stuff is all they have in common, but they can't see it because they're too focused on what's going on right now. They can't see too far ahead into their future or imagine an alternative because, again, they weren't given those skills to handle that stuff as it comes along in their life. And that's a big part also of what I used to do, is go help work with the parents to say, hey, there are other ways that you can work with this, handle these issues other than resorting to this more negative stuff. And in doing so, it's going to make things better overall within the family. And once in a while, some people would say, well, who are you to come in here and tell me what I got to do and change my life and fix things? And how do you know about that? Well, because I was you. I came from that. But I made it better. I chose to step outside of that. And I'm not saying my life is perfect by any means, but I know what it takes to get it out of this and into a different, better direction. And I used to fight against my coworkers because in what you guys in your area call DFS, sorry, we call it DSS here. So you guys, Department of Family and Children Services, gotcha. I always have to remind that we're kind of behind here and with that of what we call our services. But we as an area say to the families, give us your lives. We're going to put all this stuff in place and fix it for you and then give it back to you. But then we're gone. And the people are kind of like, wait, where'd you go? The foster a reliance on all the workers to be handling everything for them without fostering independence to teach them how to do it themselves and how to stand on their own 2 feet, but to still say, hey, we're still here in the background cheering you on and we're still here to support you, but now you got to try to fly yourself. And I think that for me, something that always touched me deeply, and still to this day does, and it's as a reminder of where I came from, but where I can go, is this poem that was written by a French poet back in I want to say it was written back in the 1700s. I can't remember his last name. I'm blanking on it, but his first name is Gerard. But anyway, it says, "Come to the edge." And it goes along these lines: come to the edge, but we are afraid. Come to the edge, we said, but we are afraid. Come to the edge, said life. They came, they jumped, and they flew. And so even when you're afraid, even when you are dragging your feet at changing, even when you don't think that you can have the wings to fly and make it better and do better, make better changes, you surprise yourself oftentimes when you try. And everybody has that potential within them. And I think if you're in the field of helping anybody who deals with substance abuse issues, and you've lost the capability to see that in people, it's time to retire and get out of the field, because you can't be there for someone anymore when you've lost that ability to see someone's capability to fly. So those are my thoughts on that.
Well, thank you for your answer. And actually, there's a shout out I want to say to my Aunt Stacy. Happy birthday.
Yep. Happy birthday, Paige.
Happy birthday. I might have been, so I'm sorry. But happy birthday. I love you.
We're meant to embarrass our family on our birthday. It's what we do.
I just want to say thank you for your opinion and thank you for the answers. Now I'm going to go to my mom. I'm going to ask you some questions, the same questions that I asked them. How do you feel drug addiction affects society as a whole?
Well, thank you for having me on this panel. I appreciate it. So when we think about the topic of drug addiction and drug awareness and substance abuse, I feel like it affects society as a whole because of the simple fact that we are not alone in this world, right? And it does have a tremendous cost on the individual who is the actual sufferer, yes. But that also comes with the fact of understanding that not only does it affect the sufferer, it actually affects the family and the community, right? And with that being said, it affects the community in many ways. The individual who is suffering, presumably, and this is actually, statistically as well, these individuals start to have difficulties in their financial life. They have difficulties within their employment. So it really takes a big effect on them. And then on top of that, they do have issues within the mental health realm of things as well, where they start becoming dependent on their drug of choice. So it leads them into doing behaviors. And a lot of times it really comes down to an underlying factor or peer pressure. There's a lot of reasons to why. But I think as a society in whole, we are not in this world together. Individuals are not just subject to their own space and time on this earth here, right? So an individual comes from somewhere. They have family, they have friends, they have coworkers, they have teachers, etc. So I feel like when an individual is using drugs, the impact that it has on a society is tremendous, because we as a society go through it together. We see the individual suffering. Some people face the repercussions of that individual's actions because they are so inflicted by this urge to use more and to need more in order just to maintain the normalcy within their life. So that's why I think it affects us as a whole. I also like what you said in the beginning of the show, where you stated that, when individuals are partaking in this, you do have individuals who actually are sellers, right? And then the users are the buyers. So we do see sellers occupying street corners, businesses, in front of schools, etc., places where they have a mainstream amount of individuals that come by that area, right? And so because of that, the individuals that are walking may not be always the buyers, but in all reality, they are witnessing this. The children, like you mentioned earlier, the impressionable children are seeing this. The paraphernalia is being left behind when users are using it. Not to mention individuals that are expecting. So I'm speaking about women that are pregnant, that are expecting, that do develop this dependency on any substance, in a sense that has a long-lasting effect on the child within utero. So we also see that, and I'm going to speak more from the medical aspect of it, because during my medical career, as Paige mentioned, I was an EMT. I am retired at this present time. I've witnessed many cases. I even, unfortunately, was unable to successfully revive the individual who has what we call overdose, or used an excessive amount of the substance that has impaired their ability to breathe on their own, or to have their heart pumping efficiently and effectively, right? So because of that, these individuals perish, sad to say, but sometimes these are in the homes of their family and in local establishments. And, I had individuals that came up to me grabbing on my uniform, you have to save them, do what you can. And I'm doing everything that I can to save that person. And I take the comfort in knowing that I did everything that I could within my protocol, within my scope of practice, to save the individual. But it does have detrimental effects, physical effects, as well as psychological effects of the community as a whole. So I think that's how drug abuse and substance abuse affects a community or society.
Thank you for that lovely question. I have another question for you. How do you think drug abuse and mental health correlate to one another?
So I think there is a big correlation between mental health and substance abuse, or drug abuse, should I say. And the reason why I feel personally that it is a big correlation is because a lot of times individuals who turn to drugs, right, they either want to fit in, like we were saying, in teenagers, in the cases of teenagers or younger adults, they do it to fit in, to be in the in crowd, as Dean Perry mentioned, as Katie mentioned, as well as Donna had mentioned. And now when they're doing that, we say that it's peer pressure. But to be honest with you, when we take away from that and we look at an individual as an individual, and we look at them, a lot of the times that individual is suffering from low self-esteem. They are suffering from their own types of disassociated personality disorders, where they feel disassociated from the society that they belong into, right? So this is why they try to fit in, because they want to be accepted. They look for the acceptance. They look for to be liked. And a lot of it is a self-esteem issue. So that's another way that it actually impacts you mentally, because, right, we go home and we think, well, why can't I be like so-and-so? And a lot of that, like I said, also falls in my opinion, through social media platforms, big influencers, etc. You have movie stars, you have individuals that people idolize as young adults. And let's be honest, their darkest secrets with drug addiction, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, whatever it may be, pain medications, it is so publicized that now it becomes a pretty much a announcement to the world, right, that these individuals are suffering. And a lot of the times the individuals who are suffering don't really quite understand the gravity or the impact that their behaviors have, right? So then you have impressionable people who are like, well, if they're doing it, I want to try it. So there's that as well. Another issue is that being in the medical field, there is a lot of people who suffer from certain conditions that cause pain, right? Fibromyalgia is one of them. You have the neurological, different types of neurological illnesses. I don't want to get too much into medical terms, but who suffer from that, where these individuals are in constant pain, right? So they go to a doctor. The doctor then prescribes them with a pain medication to help stop that. And the reason why they're prescribing them the pain medication is not so they can abuse the drug or become dependent on it, is because so they can return to somewhat of a normal life in a sense, and function within a normal range, or what they feel is quasi-normal, right? So what happens is that individual eventually builds up so much of that resistance to that drug because the body gets so used to it. Now it's not working for them anymore, so they need more. They need more drugs. They need more drugs. And the doctors a lot of times up the medication or change the medication in order to counteract that feeling. But what really comes down to it is that a lot of the times they are missing one of the main points, that a lot of it is also contributed to their psycho awareness, right? Their awareness of their body. There's something that they just discovered, not too long ago. I mean, it's been practiced, yes, throughout history, but they discovered the correlation between the fact that they have something where it's called biofeedback. And a lot of times they practice this, which is therapeutic measures without meditation, without medication, but they incorporate meditation, they incorporate holistic approaches to this in order to get people away from pain medication. Because a lot of times, once the problem is resolved in individuals who have illness in the sense of something like, let's say they broke their arm and they're experiencing a lot of pain, they're on this medication, or back problems, whatever, that they are on these medications for, and they build up this dependency on it, a lot of times they start branching off to different drugs. So we're seeing that in many ways the war on drugs is really a systemic issue in a society. And so pretty much in all reality, this is why I feel what I do. So that was a great question. I hope I answered it.
No, you're fine. What do you think can help prevent drug addiction or use?
Well, again, I think that the best thing, in my opinion, I find is what you're doing now. Spreading awareness to this. Making it known that this is a problem. Stop ignoring it. Stop ignoring people who are suffering. We need to understand, like I said, that we are a society. So what affects my neighbors will ultimately affect me. What affects my children will affect me. What affects my educators will affect me. Irregardless, it's like a domino effect, right? And I think that one of the biggest things that can help, like, I don't think we can ever stop it, but I think we can, put a little cog in its wheel to slow it down enough, is spreading awareness, offering services to individuals who need it. So making that more publicly known of these establishments that offer the help that these individuals can go to in order to gain the help they need. I have a friend right now who is hospitalized because she winded up, because of her addiction, winded up using a dirty needle and getting really ill from it. I'm not going to go into too much detail because it is privacy in her part that I'm protecting. And unfortunately, she got really sick, and this infection attacked her heart even. And, she's also expecting a baby, so it's also affecting the baby. And, she was getting the help that she needed, and then she fell off. You know why? Because there's not a lot of information that we put out there as much as we do other things, right? So like mental health is a very big contributor to the drug use and the drug use pandemic, we'll say, right? Because it's like a pandemic. It's an illness, right? That is just spreading across society, right? So I feel like the awareness, offering up more mental health services, and making mental health a priority, I should say, within this world in general, right? Given access to free help, free counseling to individuals who need it. I think that would really help, and also really approaching children in elementary school, high school, and explaining to them this, bring back the DARE program, like we've all mentioned, bring back programs that help people to understand this, and obviously, we could do more community policing and try to interject a lot of the drug exchange that we see on our streets, but that only goes so far as well. So I think as a society, we could definitely throw a pin or a little pebble in that cog that creates this, this situation that we see within our society. But I honestly feel that it's something that's a really hard fight, but people like you, right? And me and Katie and Dean Perry and Donna, who are willing to do stuff like this, I think really can help make a difference, So I think that's what it really comes down to.
I agree with you on that. I feel like every point of view that you taught us made a big impact on me, because some things we're not allowed to do, some things we're all allowed to do. That's how parents are. Parents are strict. Parents are teaching us ways of how to be a good person and not, how should I say, I don't want to offend anybody. So like, I don't want to say it off as a mean way, but me wise, I think the parents are teaching us a good way. If we pay attention, we might up actually getting a good college, having a nice time, at least, like spending time with family. And I think as daughter slash a host right now is listening to everyone's opinion, and it's like everyone needs to hear this. Even if you have kids, if you don't have kids, like everyone needs to hear this. My awareness needs to go out and tell everyone, hey, I'm here, hello. Like, you can use me. You can say #say no to drugs. Like, that's the thing I want. I want people to say no. I might not get rid of it, but I can help people to lead into a good path. Like, hey, there are some drugs that are good, but there's also drugs that can lead to illness, can lead you to hospital, can lead you to death wise. And it's like, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you 100%. I have one more question for you, if that's fine. What do you think, or who do you think can solve the solution of ending drug addiction?
Well, that's also another great question. And my response is that I think we all can help be the solution, right? Because as you guys know, I've been away from my own shows and stuff like that, etc. But one of my main focal points in my everyday life and what I instill into my children, as well as I do to my viewers when we do these shows, is that change starts with you, right? In order to change something within your society, it starts with you. And so I feel like in order for us to try to take preventative measures, in a sense, to put a stop to this, right? Or to change this, right? Or to just make a difference out there, right? It starts with every one of us. And, you may not have access to a show like me and Paige are doing, or AKA my Mad Hatter's doing right now, but you do have influence within your own homes, within your own personal circles, right? So change starts with you. And I think that we all are capable of positive change, right? It is always my goal as a parent to teach, yes, my children to be individuals, to live their life successfully, to live their life as best as they possibly can. But it also is my teaching to my children, and as I teach to everybody out there, it is also learning how to stop being so selfish, right? Learn to love harder. Learn to care for thy neighbor, in a sense, right? Learn to make a difference, whether it's the slightest difference in the world. Learn to be that change, because you never know who you might help. Or it could even be your family member that they don't even know who to go to. And you just bring up just a small conversation like this. How are you? How's everything going? I haven't seen you lately. I've noticed some things going on with you. I just want to know, how are you feeling? It starts with communication as well, right? So I think that when we start opening ourselves up, and I'm not saying be vulnerable to everything that life has to offer, but allowing people in and communicating and being caring, being given, being loving to everybody around you. Stop with the negative hate, stop with the discrimination, stop with the conflicts in general with your own personal prejudices that you may have. Get rid of all that, right? and start making those personal inside changes and then reflecting them outward. And I think that's when we'll start seeing a change in society in general, when we learn to let go of all that negative and start promoting that positive. And this is why I instill this in you and your siblings, because it's so easy, right, to look in the mirror, like I mentioned several times before in the past. It's so easy to look in the mirror and count every flaw you have. But in counting every flaw you have, what you're doing is mentally and emotionally abusing yourself in many ways, right? So when you start doing that, it really, really suppresses you. It suppresses your creativity, it suppresses your boundaries, it suppresses you as an individual as a whole, right? So instead, I know we're still on the topic of drugs, but this is my point, right? So instead, look in the mirror and learn how to say, I'm powerful, I'm brave. Change starts with me. I can be that change. And that's what you got to do, right? You really got to start being more positive and then reflecting that positivity out there within the issues. Like you've done that plenty of times where you've had issues where your friends called you into an argument and you'd said, you know what? You grew from that. You know, one minute you were like, no, yeah, I can't stand that. That's right. Yep, she's wrong. And so like, listen, you know what? I understand and thank you for sharing what you're going through with me. But at the end of the day, how about you try just to communicate with one another and try to work out the problem instead of being the problem, right? And that's what it really comes down to. So change starts with you. And for everybody out there, just simply starting a brief conversation, being caring, understanding, empathetic to one another, learning to get rid of that residual hate, anger, jealousy, all of that nastiness. You get rid of that, and then change starts with you. And then it starts reflecting outwards. And then in doing so, we start attacking all those things that lead into mental health. We learn to respect mental health. We learn to appreciate that and offer it up more. We learn to start creating programs. We start building from the positive, not the negative, right? So I think that's what it is. We have to all be that change. And I appreciate you for being that change. And yes, you know what? You spoke about you receiving the most empathetic citizen award at your school. You spoke about winning the humanitarian award at your school. But you know what? Those, at the end of the day, are just awards, right? But what matters is what you're doing behind them, right? And after you receive them, what you're doing continuously. And being a change literally is what you're doing. And you're leading the way for scholars like you. So you keep up the good work. And pretty much I hope I answered it without, I did go on a little tangent, but it's okay. It made sense, right? Hopefully. But no, I'm just kidding. But no, that's what I think. And that's my opinion.
I want to say thank you for your opinion, and I want to say, yes, I did win the humanitarian award. If you just, I did win it. I am proud of myself. It took me years and years to get what I want, so I managed, and I literally went to school. And I think last year I went to school when I was in 11th grade. I made sure to sit there and actually go to 2 classes. And I looked at the teacher and was like, you're going to see me next year. And the teacher said, how? I was like, you're going to see me next year. And the teacher was like, I feel like you're going to be the top student because of how positive of your mindset is, how strong you are, how talented, how skilled you are. I was like, they seem different if you look at them, actually talk to them, if you see the true colors. You'll actually be surprised because that's how I am. Growing up, I had a lot of issues. That's in the past. I had bullying. That's in the past. And I told them, oh, well, that's the way I am. So you can't change that. And I want to say thank you to my mom, Amanda, for actually letting me be the host of the show because at first it was nervous. I was. But me sitting here realizing that I should be the same thing as you. I should be a host because you feel so comfortable just talking what you want to say. You feel so powerful. And it's like you feel like you can rule anything. And that's what I feel like. And I feel so happy to have my mom's friends, the what is it? The I don't know how to explain, my teacher, my principal, I could just say, not my teacher, my principal, to be here. I feel so proud and happy to share my awareness, because like I really do want everyone to see this, of how talented these women are, men too, the women and men too. And I just want to say that no matter where you go, you're always going to succeed. You're always going to accomplish anything. And that's what I taught myself. That's what my mom taught me from years of growing up, since she taught me how to walk. And like, since I have my own podcast right here, I just want to say everyone is different in their own way. So it's like, it's the best feeling, you could say. And everybody who struggles with addiction, you can literally actually sit here and talk about it. Write a book, write music about it. There's a whole bunch of talented people. There's poets. Like, do anything that you want to express of how you feel, and people will see and be in your shoes. Because that's how I felt. And I feel like for that statement, it's like, I just want to say I am very proud of all of you for being on my show. I actually have something to say if you guys don't mind. I do want to say thank you for all your comments. But I am now going to add in my thoughts on this topic. As a child, my family has been nothing but supportive, has done everything in their power to help me navigate in this world. However, that doesn't mean as a child or as a scholar, I did not neglect to see the problem within the society that I live in. With that being said, drug addiction is more preventive among teenagers. Teenagers get a hold of it. Teenagers lie about their age. Actually, World Drug Day is celebrated on June 26th. This event is held in order of bringing sense of awareness. What I'm doing now is bring awareness to my topic, to everyone, to say no to drugs. Drug addiction has struggles for people. People will face the struggles. People will be involved with drug choices of which drug they want to take. There's have been issues. We could say that parents should keep an eye on their children's activities, meaning monitor the social media activities, who they're friends with, mostly inputting their behaviors. Focus on each activities what your kid's doing. Focus on the behavior. See what's different from like yesterday until today. Social media has been put into place to discuss things and behaviors that lead down on a dark path. It's estimated that 5.6% of the world's population is involved with drug use. The age between 15 to 64, we all have to remember that no matter if you're friends, strangers, neighbors, or even educators, that are involved in something we call society. And that means we all should care about humanity. As a whole, we should care. As a final school project, I have decided to do my part by helping to spread awareness to drug addiction, which is right here, the podcast. It is my hope that this can help our community understand we're all in this together because we're all a community. I think the follow solutions can help with drug addiction. There's rules that there are like steps. Step one, there's where is it? Step one, there's what is that?
Set up free facilities that users can go to find support. Many users face financial hardships due to their addiction.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. There are some health clinics too. There's emotional mental health clinics, I could say, sorry, to address underlying unsolved issues. There's Bring Back the Day program to schools. I heard that the DARE program is a big thing for the students, and I think that should be important for us. Stop treating users as problems. Treat them as individuals who need help. Because if you see someone who's struggling, then that's disrespectful. And lastly, remember, we're all in this together. And so please spread awareness. Who knows, you might just save a life or even change one. So I just want to say that you should actually help someone if they need help, because you never know. There's good luck, there's bad luck, but sometimes there will be like God will bless you after you bless that person. It will be as a gift for you. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you to Donna, Katie, my mom, and Dean Perry. And I just want to say have a good night for everyone. I hope you guys had a great Memorial Day.
Thanks for having us on again, Paige, and for this project. I was proud to be part of it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige, and I'm very proud of you, and you keep being you, and you keep shining your light into all those little dark areas and dark corners and everything else, and spreading awareness to everything that you feel that you need to in order to help change someone's life and make their life a little better. So thank you for being that change, and I love you, and I am very, very much proud of you.
Thank you.
And of course,
I'm so glad to have you guys being here. I really am. Thank you for being part of my social justice project, I can say.
Paige, you're awesome.
yes, you truly are. I was just going to say, you know, you aren't alone in doing this project whatsoever. So, you know, you have a wonderful bunch of people that have been on this show to support you in every step of the way in your project. So I wish you all the success in the world from here on out.
Thank you so much. I feel so happy. Thank you.